Future's now, old man.
What it do? Peekaboo! This is Future First Podcast, where we are helping you win today with a future first mindset. I'm your co-host Jmac here with my co-host Jose. What's going on, dude?
Hey, what's up, Jmac? I'm good, man. How you been?
Oh man, it's December and the lights are up, the decorations are going. It's Christmas time, man. You know, it's feeling good. I got my eggnog, so I'm drinking my eggnog lattes in the morning. Life's good, man.
Yeah, 100%. I'm normally a lights and decorations type of guy. Pretty early, they're up for Thanksgiving. We were moving though during the week of Thanksgiving, and finding a place. So we didn't get to really put that stuff up until a bit later. But we're all moved in now, so everything's kind of up. It feels like home. It's kind of almost the worst time to move, but also the best time because now the house is all like decorated. I didn't need to take all this stuff down and put new stuff up. I just went straight into putting up the Christmas stuff. So that kind of saved a step there. But yeah, man, it's December, and you know what that means. Fantasy playoffs are right around the corner. We got an awesome episode for you guys here today, right before the fantasy playoffs. Yeah, man, what are we gonna talk about, J Mag? Let's hit it off.
Yeah, hopefully you guys have been good and you'll get some fantasy championships for Christmas here. But before we get into that, as always, we are on YouTube. Go ahead and touch down on that like button and go for two on that subscribe. Drop us a comment if you so please. We love to engage with you guys. Shout out to Fox, who's been helping us with our YouTube thumbnails and our graphics. She's great. You can follow her on bfoxworth07 on X. We're also on Spotify and Apple Pods. You can follow and rate the show there. And again, drop a review. But yeah, man, you mentioned it. We got another banger of an episode teed up here. We're gonna talk about some playoff fantasy pre-playoff awards here. So we're gonna talk about some guys that we think deserve some recognition here for the year they've given us, and then we're gonna get a little bit wild here and throw out some fantasy related takes, more in general, but it should be fun and should be a little bit controversial. I feel like maybe we will agree, maybe we won't, but let's find out. But first, as always, man, a quick hit. What do you say? All right. We are fresh off the Thursday night football game ending here between the Lions and the Cowboys. You put in the doc here that we talk about the Cowboys if they win, but here we are. The Lions have won, man. Cowboys playoff hopes aren't looking too good from what I understand.
Yeah, it wasn't looking great anyways. I mean, I think it would mostly have taken the Cowboys winning out or, also on top of that, an Eagles collapse. So it was not great going into it. It's even worse now. But, fantasy football podcast, let's focus on the fantasy, which is, as I told my wife, I was like, well, if the Cowboys had to lose, at least Jameer Gibbs had a great game, and I can have, I can find comfort in that my fantasy teams are doing well thanks to Jameer Gibbs. I mean, he's a guy maybe we'll be talking about later in the awards section. He popped off again, 3 touchdowns. Montgomery didn't have a bad game. Surprisingly, Amon-Ra St. Brown played. He was, somewhat kind of irrelevant. I mean, he saw a decent amount of targets, didn't get in the end zone. We were all shocked. Awake by Tesla, getting a little touchdown there, electrified the game. I think there was a lot of hype for him, but unfortunately, Amon-Ra did play, and Williams looked good. I mean, not Javante, the other Williams,
JMO.
Jameson. Javante didn't look bad either, though. So yeah, man, a lot of fantasy goodness, a good, pretty high scoring game. So how did that kind of set your week up?
So far, so good. A lot of the teams or lineups that I had with players going tonight were they all had the studs. So it was a lot of Dak, a lot of CD, which is a bummer. But at least he gave us something before going out. But man, he would have had a monster game if we would have just translated what Ryan Flanoy he put up like 8 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown or something like that. The dude's got like 25 points in one of our leagues, in the league that we're trying to tank on, by the way. So there it goes again. Just another reason why we can't win at that league. But yeah, man, it was good all the way around. Like you said, Javonte Williams had a good game. Dak had a good game. Goff really didn't have, I guess, that great of a game, right? Because we had Jahmyr Gibbs taking the 3 tutties to the house. I think I saw on the broadcast he's got, was it 47 touchdowns before he's 23?
Yeah, he's tied, I think, with the record with is it Barry Sanders?
Yeah.
So he's right there. He's one away, which obviously, I mean, he'll break unless his birthday's like tomorrow or something. But yeah, man, I mean, it was fantasy goodness all around. It kind of sucks that Goff had such a bad game or mediocre game with how many points they put up. But when that I feel like that's just par for the course with the Lions. Like they're almost always going to have several rushing touchdowns that are putting up 30 plus points. I feel like Dan Campbell just loves that. He loves that he wants it to be rushing touchdowns. But yeah, man, I mean, it was great all over. You hope that CD's, it was a concussion. It looks like hopefully it's not going to be too serious if you're out there needing him for the fantasy playoffs the first week. Thankfully, they do get additional time here. The game was Thursday. They don't play again, I think, until Sunday. So you get a little bit more time for him to potentially clear the protocol. It didn't look like Higgins, where he seemed like he got knocked out cold. But, he did try to go make a spectacular catch and couldn't, protect himself. Head slammed on the ground pretty well. So hopefully he'll be all right. Hopefully everything will be okay and he'll be ready for next week if you need him.
Yeah, I hope so, because I mean, we need him in one of our leagues, and it's never fun without him.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not.
All right, man. Well, that's enough of these Bears and Cowboys here. Let's get into our first segment here for the awards. What you got?
Just wrong animal, but Lions, Bears, they they'll hurt you, they'll maim you, they'll kill you. I mean, that whole division's got animals all over, so we're good.
All right, it's gonna be another one of those episodes. All right, let's
Buckle
get
up,
in,
folks.
let's get into it. All right, tonight we are rolling out the red carpet here for the Gridiron Greats and our very own Fantasy Football Awards. We're going to shout out some of our favorites and relive the moments that made you spike your phone or wake up your neighbors or text the group chat in all caps. We know you've been there. So grab your imaginary tux, set up your lineup, and set up your lineup pride aside, and let's get into the 2025 Fantasy Football Awards here. All right, man. First up, we're going to talk about our fantasy MVPs. Who was that most valuable player for you this year, Jose?
Yeah, I mean, I think I also kind of we wanted to get this out before the playoffs and maybe revisit it after the playoffs, just because the playoffs can make swing things. Even like Jahmyr Gibbs' game today almost had me switching my vote last minute. But yeah, I mean, I stuck with this guy. It's a guy that I think a lot of people were fearful of. And he's right now, I don't know after Gibbs' performance where he's at, but in most scoring formats, CMC was RB1 on the season, and to me, he is that MVP. I mean, he hasn't had the high highs like Jonathan Taylor has, but it's been so consistent. They've needed him so bad, and even now with all the weapons getting healthy, it's still the CMC show like it's been. At this point, you're not worried about the 20 plus touches he's getting. He has just completely dominated. You got him at a discounted price due to all the injury concerns, so that also kind of factors in. You didn't pay the Bijan price, the Gibbs price. Some leagues I saw he was going as back in like 106, 107, sometimes slipping all the way to the end of the first round, depending on how people were reaching for wide receivers in the format. So to me, he's just being CMC, right? And this is what everybody said coming into the season. If he's healthy, he's the best running back for fantasy in the league. And even a guy who like Jonathan Taylor and Gibbs, who are having crazy touchdowns and just doing all the things, are still, trailing him in terms of total fantasy points, I think. So for me, it's CMC, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I just looked it up. Even with Jameer Gibbs playing an extra game, well, I guess that's not true because CMC hasn't had his bye yet. So I guess they've evened out now. He's still, 30 some odd points behind CMC and half point PPR. And with that being said, I mean, he's at 22 points per game in that half PPR format. So, like you said, just really consistent. You can rely on him to, at least cover up another dud in your lineup from week to week. And he's, yeah, so good. So fun to watch. I'm so glad he's on my NFL team, the 49ers, because it's, we need him. He's the only thing keeping us in it right now. No, but we're healthy and going forward. But yeah, I like that one, man. Is there more you want to say on him before I throw out my MVP here?
No, man, let's hear it. Who you got?
Yeah, you already mentioned him, and it's Jonathan Taylor. Holy moly. You talk about getting a discount, too. I mean, he was going in fourth rounds of some formats, and this guy is just boom game after boom game after boom game. These last few weeks haven't been great, but they haven't been bad where you're kind of shrugging your shoulders, looking down, being like, what's going on? He has gotten you in one of my leagues because of him. I've won 11 weeks in a row, and I'm in the first seed because of him. So I'm looking forward to just continually to put him in the lineup and hope for the best going forward here because man, he's been so good this year. And I don't know if you guys remember too, but coming down the stretch last year, he was a league winner. If you had him on your teams, I think he put up something like 40 points or 30 points in the championship week, and all throughout the playoffs, he kept your squad fighting and getting in it. So hoping for another repeat of that again. And yeah, let's go, JT. Take us to the promised land.
Yeah, I mean, I think those. I don't think there's a wide receiver who you could put into this category this year, at least. So I think these are the two clearest names. I think Gibbs would probably be the podium. He'd probably round out, at least in my eyes, the podium. He'd probably be the bronze medal if we were doing it that way. It's kind of just pick your flavor, right? Like it's all delicious. Food you're eating is just. Do you want Jonathan Taylor, who's had those super exciting 50-point games, or the kind of the consistency and not as high of a spike in weeks in CMC. But either way, man, I mean, there's some teams that have both of these guys. I mean, that's definitely not normally what something you could have drafted, but this year, based on where they were going, you could have started if you went heavy running back. And I've seen a few of those teams. We got one in a league we're playing in that has that. I mean, it was a keeper league where some trades were made, but still, I mean, those two guys can single-handedly win you a championship. And Jonathan Taylor, with his high-end performances, can win you any single week pretty much by himself. So I definitely don't disagree too much on that pick. What category? What are we going to hit next?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna maybe say like, is there any honorable mentions we should put in here for fantasy MVP? I feel like JSN. Like, if any wide receiver was gonna sneak in there, he could be in there. I mean, we got him in another category here that we'll get to later, but yeah, I mean, Puka maybe he's kind of fallen off. He had the injuries too. I feel like outside of them, like there's no one really that you're feeling really good plugging into your lineup.
No, yeah, from the wide receiver, I guess. Yeah, that was I guess a oversight. JSN would be kind of maybe the honorable wide receiver mention here. Just his year has also been fantastic. Yeah, I mean, for me, the only other one, like I said, would be another running back in Gibbs. But
Yeah.
even Mahomes with his amazing quarterback play and some of the other quarterbacks there you haven't had the Lamar, Josh Allen sort of crazy
Yeah.
years, so you don't really have that from a position. McBride maybe from the tight end position, but unless you're playing in a tight end premium league, it's just not the same, right? It just doesn't hit the same quite as much there. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any other names to throw in the ring there.
Yeah, same. So I don't know if you guys are out there listening, drop a comment below. Who's your fantasy MVP? If you agree with one of our guys, go ahead, cast a vote. Jonathan Taylor, CMC, maybe it's Gibbs. Yeah, throw it down in the comments. But with that, let's move on to the next one. Let's get into the best value, most bang for your buck who is the guy that you drafted in those later rounds, let's say like fifth plus round, who has just been in your lineup week to week, doing nothing but getting you wins and making you look like a draft savant? Who's that guy for you, man?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny. The two players we picked. I'll let you get into your guy, but just based on who the team they're from here. But for me, it's George Pickens. I don't think a lot of people were expecting what they got. Obviously, the CeeDee Lamb injury kind of really has propelled him. But even when CD has come back, besides I think this game, he's had very good performances, and it was nothing. You weren't picking George Pickens to be the wide receiver. I think he's in the top five still at the position. When you where you were selecting him and how you were building your team, right? You were thinking maybe this is your wide receiver two, maybe this is a flex guy, depending on if you did any single onesie positions. So to me, it just feels like getting a top five player in the fifth round or later. That's kind of what I went for there, and yeah, that's why George Pickens is my kind of pick here for the best value.
Yeah, man, that was a great shout, and honestly, that's where my mind went first. So I was kind of upset that when you got in the dock and I already had him in there, but yeah, I think I got him in our keeper league in the fifth round, and my two keepers this year were Puka and Drake London. So he's been filling a flex spot for me, which has been really nice. And now that London's out, he's been filling in for that wide receiver two role, and I can feel good about that. So yeah, he's a solid, great value, great pick all around. All right, for my guy here, I think what you're alluding to is that we have two guys from the same team, and that's Javonte Williams. You were grabbing him in the ninth plus rounds here, and you're getting an RB1 in those ninth plus rounds. In the earlier season, you were getting like a top five, top three RB here, going forward. But he's still, even though it's not those still high end outputs that he was giving you earlier in the season, it's really great and consistent usage where he's the bell cow. There's nobody else there. He's getting all the touches, and he has a pretty good yards per carry. This is the Javonte Williams that we all wanted 4 years ago when we were drafting him as a rookie, and he just hasn't been that guy. But lo and behold, he's shining like a star now, and you got him in the ninth round. And man, that's got to feel really good to put an RB1 on your team for that late of a draft pick after you have all your other starting spots filled.
Yeah, I mean these are the type of guys that really help you win those championships because they're completely unexpected. You were like, oh, maybe I have a flex or maybe I have a guy to fill in, and then all of a sudden you got a bona fide RB1. Like you said, his star has been shining just like the bright star on the side of his helmet there for the Cowboys.
It's not that
I
bright.
think, I mean, I mean, compared to where you drafted him, like you said, right? Like it's all relative to where you drafted him. You had no. I don't think anybody, even the most optimistic Javonte Williams truthers or Cowboy fans, were thinking he would be a solid RB1 as he is. Just consistent 12 plus points pretty much every week, and then the upside if he can get a few extra touches in the receiving game. Miles Sanders getting hurt also kind of really cemented him as there's really nobody else there. So yeah, man. Did you have? I had a couple guys for honorable mentions. Did you have anybody else that you wanted to kind of maybe shout out?
Yeah, I mean, I could throw out a few guys, but why don't you go ahead and shout yours out first?
Yeah, so mine were a couple quarterbacks, like I talked about earlier. I mean, Mahomes, we've talked about it throughout the season. You were getting him 10, like the 10th, 11th, quarterback off the board. It was so late in some leagues. And then the other one was Drake May, just based on kind of how well they've performed. It's that late round quarterback strategy. Those are the perfect guys that if you drafted them, you feel so good about because they've just been starters every week besides their bye week, and you haven't really had to worry about it. And you spent no premium draft capital on them, right? Like if you drafted some of the premium quarterbacks like the Lamars, the Josh Allens, the who else? Maybe Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, guys that were kind of in the top 5, 6
Yeah.
rounds. Besides Allen, you've pretty much been pretty upset that you wasted that pick on those guys when you could have had Mahomes in the 10th, Drake May. You were talking about he went undrafted. So, there's definitely been something to say about the value that they brought for your quarterback room.
Yeah, man. Late round QB for the win. It's still alive and well. I like those shouts out. I think a couple that I would fill in here. I'd probably throw in Quinshon Judkins. He had that contract issue where he wasn't even on the team in the draft season, or he was, and then they weren't sure how it was going to shake out, and people were expecting him to get suspended from the off the field stuff that he had. But I mean, I was getting him in like the 10th and 11th rounds in some drafts. And again, you had to wait a few weeks for him to kind of get in there. But once he got in there, it was great from the get go. And again, it's one of those things where he's kind of the bell cow. He's getting majority of the usage over there. Even as bad as the team is, he's still making getting it done. And I think that's because as bad as the team is, they have to rely on him to kind of get it done. So Judkins is probably someone I would shout out. And then maybe some of the other rookie wide receivers here, like I think Tedero McMillan can kind of fill in there. He was like going around in the fifth round pick, but man, he's been decent. You know, he's getting a lot of targets, and he just hasn't had a lot of touchdowns to kind of buoy his wide receiver finishes. And then yeah, I mean, Emeka Egbuka is probably another one that I think would slide into there. He was getting pretty steamy in the draft season, but even then, um, I put him in another category, so I'll kind of save some words for him there. But if that rounds out our best value, let's get into the biggest bust. Oh man, this sucks. I hate talking about stuff like this, especially your guy, because I had him in a few places on one of our teams, man. So why don't you go ahead and talk about this guy?
Yeah, man, it's Ashton Genty for me. He just got drafted way too high. It's one of those where like if you miss on your first round pick and he's that far off what you drafted him. Another guy I had in consideration was Saquon, but Saquon hasn't been nearly as unplayable, but it was close. So for me, it was Genty. It's just you had to draft him in the first round as a running back, and he's barely ever produced like that sort of player for you. I think there was maybe he's had 2 weeks where he's done that, right? The offensive line has just been so bad. Gino's been so bad. The whole situation has kind of just sucked. And for whatever reason, for like the first 10 weeks, they were like, this guy can't catch the ball. I don't know. They didn't do what we were just kind of talking about with Judkins, where he was just a centerpiece and he got a lot of pass catching. Like they just weren't using him. They were just like, here, run and get hit behind the line for 5 yards and try to make something happen, which he did, right? I mean, if he wasn't as special of a talent as he was, his numbers would look way worse. But to me, it's just I kind of just thought of who was the highest drafted player I can think of that's performed just way below his level, and that would be Genty for me.
Yeah, Ashton Janky. Gosh, no, he's really good still. I can't put that on him. Yeah, it's just a situation. Hopefully that gets better in the offseason and the Raiders do the right thing and start drafting an offensive line before they get a quarterback. Yeah, for me, man, it was between a couple people here, and they were all wide receivers. The first and second round were full of a lot of wide receiver busts. I was between Justin Jefferson, ouch, and Brian Thomas Jr. And I decided to go with Brian Thomas Jr. just because Justin Jefferson at least gave you something middle of the year. He had, I think, one 20-point game, but he's had more 10-point games than Brian Thomas Jr. has. It was hard to weigh that though, because I mean, Justin Jefferson was a first round draft capital, whereas Brian Thomas Jr. was, I think I was on the teams I have him in. He was a late second round pick. I definitely wasn't taking him in the early second round. I was prioritizing guys like Drake London over him and Puka over him. So yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. has just not been the same guy. And whether it's injury or he just fooled us all and he's not who we thought he was last year, or it's a Trevor Lawrence problem, that story is yet to be told, and we kind of have to wait to figure that out. Hopefully in these last few weeks here in the season, he can kind of get things going and give us a little more confidence going into 2026 about who he is and what he can do for your team. But man, it has been real bad this year. And yeah, I don't know, man. Do you agree?
Yeah, honestly, when I saw your name, I thought, oh yeah, that one. I kind of missed that one just because of how the expectations you had of how a top five finish as a rookie. But there's several things there that you mentioned. You hope and not hope in terms of like you want a player hurt, but you hope it's one of those situations where later on we find out just really how bad hurt he was because it just looks like a completely different player out there. It doesn't even look like the same player running routes, dropping a ton of passes in the first few weeks as well. So it's definitely been a sad time for Brian Thomas Jr. You hope he can turn it around. If you believe in his talent, though, kind of like Genti, those they're going to be guys that next year may be big values because if he can't turn it around, like you said, and he really still is as good as he was that first year, he's going to be drafted way later. So you hope it's not a Trevor Lawrence problem, and you hope he didn't fool us all because those are things that are not going to be fixed going into next season. You hope it's just been, a long list, a laundry list type of thing of injuries that he's been dealing with. But yeah, man, it's been sad times there. It's not been a very Duval of him.
It's been very Duval. Yeah. All right. Well, we can exit out of those big losers over there and let's get into some of our personal favorites here. So I guess I had a hard time kind of choosing one for this because I wasn't sure if this was just guys I was drafting everywhere that kind of worked out and that I had a flag planted on them, or it was more like a retrospective thing where it was like, oh man, this guy's been really good for me, and I'm really glad I drafted him. So maybe you can help me understand where we were going with this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the category is more just like a player you drafted who you've really enjoyed, as watching play football, watching have on your team, and obviously part of that has to be them, performing well, right? So for my guy, it's a guy I talked about during the offseason or right at the beginning of the season who I thought could be a top five wide receiver in the NFL, and that's JSN. So part of that for me has been being right on him, but also if you watch JSN play, it's just fun. It's just he looks like an elite wide receiver, right? He makes the catches, he makes catches after the run, he makes Sam Darnold look good. He's just a fun player. You didn't have to draft him super high as well, right? Like you said, there were a ton of busts all over that second round, going into the third round of wide receivers, and he kind of has clearly been the best one in that area. So it was just like that, like a guy that you're like, yeah, like you're excited every time you see your roster. That every time I go to the roster that I have JSN on, I don't have him a ton of places because I didn't do a ton of redraft, but in the few places I have him, I'm like, every time I see, I'm like, yeah, I have JSN, like that's awesome. I like it. That's kind of the feeling the player should give you.
Okay, for sure. Well, the first guy that came to mind was Christian McCaffrey, and because I do really like watching him play, I was all over him because it just felt like such a great value in that late first, early second to put him on your squad. And yeah, man, I mean he's awesome. This year it hasn't been like as fun to watch him because the explosiveness hasn't been there with him. It's just been like the team needing him and leaning on him and him getting those tough yards, albeit like good chunk yards at a time. There just hasn't been those plays where you're the highlight reel plays where he's getting it done. So I went a different route here, and I chose Emeka Egbigbu, because I was drafting him everywhere, and I mean I was taking him in as early as like the sixth, sometimes even the fifth rounds, depending on the format, and I had him in a lot of places, and it worked out really really well because not only was he got off to a hot start, he was consistently in your lineup for the first 7 to 8 weeks, and getting it done for you. And it was about that time where we kind of started looking at the stats and looking at it and was like, hey, this guy's way overperforming. And it's really a situation. And it was around that time that we were starting to kind of, trade him away and get away from that profile because we were able to kind of recognize that it didn't seem sustainable. So not only was it a hit and it worked out immediately, production wise for your squads, but then we were able to kind of look into it further and identify him as a trade away target, which we successfully did multiple times. And it seems to be working out on that front as well too. Now that you have Godwin coming back, Mike Evans might even come back as early as this week. They opened up his practice window, which we haven't really talked about, but he's practicing and he could be back this week. So these signs are all not great for Emeka Egbuka. But it was fun, man. Like, he's so good. And we still have to just wait for, this was what we thought we were going to have to get from him, was he was going to be another JSN or Roma Dunze, where it was going to take a year for him to kind of get into that role. And instead, injuries flipped that on its head, and he was in that role right away. But now it feels like that's kind of coming to a delayed status of having to wait for him to kind of be good. But man, he is so good. Just, you've seen the one-handed catches, you've seen him getting open and high pointing the ball and doing it all, really. Like, yeah, he looked good, man.
Yeah, I mean, he was someone I would kind of qualify as like a spring fling, right? Like those first 7, 8 weeks they were magical, man. I mean, he was on such a heater. He was so good, but you called it out. I remember very specifically on a couple of shows, you were like, he's getting a lot of touchdowns. The numbers behind that are not great, and I know there was a lot of people that were like, "Oh, that's crazy, Egbuka, keep going." And it's like, well, it's not always that sustainable, right? And it's kind of fallen off a little bit. Baker's also been injured, but that mind meld, that kind of great connection that they did talk about between Baker and Egbuka, you see it. He targets kind of Egbuka the way he does Evans, like down the field. He needs a big play. He knows that's a guy to count on. It just hasn't hit the last 3-4 weeks as well as it did in those first few weeks. But yeah, man, it was a huge win. I think if you were able to, get those 6 weeks winning with Egbuka and then trade him away for another player and then start, winning with him as Egbuka started trending down. It was something we told you guys here. So hopefully, you were listening, took our advice on it. But I mean, he looks poised to be a great fantasy asset in the future as soon as, the path clears a little bit for him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think we kind of identified a couple of our other favorite players, but I don't know if there's anyone else you wanted to shout out before we move into the next segment here.
No, man, I think we hit that pretty well. I mean, we can kind of revisit this if there's time. The off season is long, about how maybe some of our picks might change depending on how the fantasy playoffs. I know before we got into it, you were talking about Gibbs as a league winner. You kind of think he might have that stretch like he did last year, where he kind of completely dominated through the fantasy playoffs. Jonathan Taylor, like you said, could potentially do the same. There's a few other players who have really good matchups that could potentially really catch fire and help a lot of people win championships. So maybe, we can come back and see if the playoffs changed our mind on any of these guys.
Yeah, man, I really do think it is going to be there. Like, I was telling you just before the show, like, I was already thinking that Gibbs is primed to be a league winner here. And I mean that seems stupid because it's one of the top picks in all of the drafts, but I mean more so like for these championship weeks, like it really feels like Gibbs is just going to catch fire here. And then we saw him go off for 3 tutties tonight, and it's just, I don't know, that feeling is stronger than it was before. So
Yeah, I mean, it literally almost made me change my MVP there. I didn't want to be too recency biased and be ruled by the moment. Also, I barely own any CMC, so like I own a lot more Gibbs, so I've just experienced that hype more, right? And
yeah,
having him go off today, but yeah, Gibbs is awesome, man.
so good, so good. All right, well, let's get into the next segment here, our wild takes segment. All right, guys, it's time to stir the pot. Let's get into some overall fantasy takes that may have us looking like Flynn Rider meme. That's the one where all the swords are pointing at us. Welcome to Wild Fantasy Takes. This isn't about one player or one week. We're talking big picture beliefs, formats, scoring, positions, you name it, we're going to take it. Jose, you go one, I'll go one. Let's go back and forth here.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go with this one first because I feel like we're gonna be at big time this odds on this one because it's something that I've just more and more has become something that I find I'm on the opposite side of how people are feeling about this, and I know there's like entire platforms built around this format, man, but I think best ball sucks. I'm not a big fan. Like I feel like there's a lot of skill built into setting lineups, and I understand like if you want to run best balls so you can do like 50 drafts and then you don't have to worry about setting lineups, I kind of understand that. I understand like the underdog and like the platforms that are just for that, like drafting in June, drafting in way too early. Like I understand that, but best ball formats and like real like dynasty leagues specifically and just like keeper leagues and like leagues that you plan to play on season over season are just not, it's not it for me, man. I really think that there is an advantage to be gained by setting the right lineup and getting bailed out. Like, let's say what the game that happened today happens in your championship week and it's a best ball league and Ryan Flournoy kicks you out of the playoffs because no, there's not a single person you can tell me that started Ryan Flournoy in a lineup league. But in best ball, okay, well, Ryan Flournoy dropped 20 points on your head and now you're out of the playoffs. Woohoo. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just one of those situations where I understand there is more strategy to building a best ball lineup and a roster in Dynasty. I completely understand that. I'm in several of those leagues, so it's not that I don't think there isn't any strategy. I just think I personally prefer to set a lineup. I personally prefer to go down, with making a decision. Hey, I'm going to flex this guy, and oh dang, he sucked, and there's another guy on my bench. Well, that's my fault. I don't want to get bailed out by the system saying, hey, okay, I'm going to make that decision for you. Here's the random guy plugged in. Here's your 13 points, and you win.
How dare you? Straight to jail right away. I don't know, man. Like I get it. It's a completely different format, and yeah, like the strategy is it's different. It's just a different flavor. The way you build your rosters is different. Like you have to think about it completely differently. The skill isn't in setting lineups. The skill is in building the roster, which I think is why I like it because I have so much anxiety about setting lineups sometimes, like to the point where I need a system on how on how my lineups are set, and a lot of times that's just either like taking projections and just plugging it in, and like I cannot target games, I cannot target matchups, like I can't like it because then it starts going all off the rails, and then I think back and I'm like, why did I make that play? Like this was obviously the right play, and that's why best ball is so good because I just build the roster like and I don't got to worry about it and then I it's fun too because it's I look into getting the depth and it's like you get to play players that you don't normally play and they're relevant so it opens up a market that isn't there in lineup league sometimes which is one of my favorite parts about Dynasty too is the trades and stuff. So I think that's why best ball kind of makes sense for me too. But how dare you?
Hey, all I'm saying is just keep it out of my dynasty, man. Keep the best ball to the best ball, and like do that, but just keep it out of my dynasty leagues, man.
All right, fair enough. All right, my first one, trade deadlines shouldn't exist. I hate trade deadlines. Like why? What I think about this now where I'm like, oh man, like I wish I could go trade for this guy, and then I go and the little button is not blue. It's gray. I can't trade for them, and I'm like, what's going on? Did they disable trades? Yeah, they did because there was a deadline, and that's stupid. The deadline should be dead. We're all adults. Just like trade shouldn't be vetoed, we shouldn't be confined into a timeline of when we should trade things. I should be able to sell out whenever I want to sell out. I'm in many leagues where this happens, and nobody is breaking the league because they're selling out, a week ahead of time or a week over time. Like people, we don't make a big deal out of it when people are selling and putting all the picks on the roster in the middle of the season. Why does it matter in the playoffs? Like who cares if that championship team just got this awesome player? Like they probably paid out of their butt to get that guy on their squad. And it's not even a guarantee that they're going to get you into the championship. So I don't know. Trade deadlines are garbage. Get him out of here.
You know who cares, Jmac? I care because I'm the team on the opposite side who has to play that guy who just traded with some other team who's done nothing else, and now he's giving him all this good players. He didn't do his homework for 14 weeks of the season. Week 15 comes and he's like, "Oh, now I'm going to make a trade and now I'm going to get this player and now I'm going to win a championship." Well, where were you for the whole entire season, bud? No, you don't get get out of jail free card. Well, your best player got hurt. Well, that's fantasy, man. It sucks. No, I'm not super hardcore on like you have to have a trade deadline. I don't like it being too early, like week 11, or there's some leagues where it matches the trade deadline with the NFL. I don't really understand that. I just think it should be cut off for the playoffs. Once the playoff seeding is locked, once we know the 6 teams, hey man, that's your team, that's your roster, that's where you're going into the playoffs. It's 2 weeks, right? Or if you don't have a bye, 3 weeks, and figure it out, man. If it doesn't go your way, like that sucks. I'm maybe just salty from people like, doing that to me, making the trade that I didn't. Is it more maybe just personal saltiness where I'm like, no, you shouldn't get to do that. You're not allowed to beat me with a player that you just traded for. But like you said, it also doesn't make a ton of sense because during the year you're allowed to do it. Why during those 3 weeks of the playoffs you shouldn't be? So I do understand that. I play in leagues with both. I don't think I play with any league that doesn't have a trade deadline whatsoever. I have some, there's some like the Toe Clan with modified. You can trade with this guy in the bracket and blah blah blah. But I actually don't think I'm in a league that doesn't have any. I've heard some really dumb reasons to have trade deadlines. As well. So it's not a hardcore thing. I mean, if I was in a league, or if a league all of a sudden changed to it, I wouldn't, immediately drop out. But yeah, what do you got, bud?
You've lied twice now. We're in a league together in undies, the league I hate. There's no trade deadline, and we started Ryan Flournoy.
Okay. Well, you don't have to call me out like that, first of all. And second of all, you're the main manager there. I'm just riding your coattails, waiting, to make all these picks. So I'm not up on no, but see, that's being a bad co-manager. I don't know the rules. So
you're good. No,
you got me there. No, but
it's fine.
I
I
had
know.
no
Yeah,
idea.
you're the co-manager.
We should put Florida on the trade blog. I hope we've done it already.
Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them. Yeah, that's the league we're trying to tank in, everyone, and we just can't seem to tank. Yeah.
I mean, that tells you the state of our wide receivers, so that we did start Flournoy because there's literally, I don't think we have a better start.
No.
But I think I told you to pick that guy out, didn't I? Didn't I tell you that?
Well,
Yeah,
you told me not to drop him because we had him on the squad, but you're like, no, don't drop him. I think he's got a role. I was like, okay. And he does. 25 points worth of a roll. Chill, Ryan. Chill, bro.
All right. My next take. I think kickers are fun, man. I think what pisses people off is when people just add kickers and they don't tweak the scoring, or the scoring is too juiced, or they just run with like the sleeper or ESPN default, which kind of makes them too relevant. I think there is some skill into picking a good kicker, right? Like there's some that are just elite. Like if you have Brandon Aubrey, you pretty much know you're getting a good amount of points, including a 60-yarder probably here and there every other game. But I enjoy playing with kickers. I spend time looking at kicker scoring. I spend time looking at matchups. How are they doing? Like what type of field goals they're kicking when they are in the league. I just think people hate the scoring. Like I don't think, unless a guy's making like multiple 50 or 60-yard field goals, that they should be scoring, like 15 points. But then you also have like defenses that can score 30 points one week. So I just think what people hate is losing to a kicker that dropped like 30 points on their head. And I understand that, but I think that's more a scoring problem than a kicker. Like, kickers are people too, guys. Like we need to recognize them. They are NFL players. They still make millions of dollars. And I enjoy playing in kicker leagues, to be honest. I feel like, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like it's less random than defenses. Like some weeks you'll start one of the best defenses. Like we started the Cleveland Browns the other week, and they got like, I don't know if it was negative points, but I think I got 3 points. Like I think the defensive scoring, or the predicting what a defense is going to do is more random than the kicker, for example.
Yeah, I don't mind them. I get why people don't like them, and yeah, it sucks when a kicker drops 25 points on you, and you're just like, what the like, come on, seriously? That's how it's gonna go out here. Um, it's they're whatever. I don't mind them. I don't research them and get into it all that much. Like I avoid Detroit's kicker. I avoid the Eagles kicker because they just always go for it on fourth down. I'm trying to find ones that are playing in domes so that weather and wind aren't a thing. And outside of that, like I'm getting a new kicker every week. So it's just like it's just more time that's spent on something that I don't feel like I should spend time on. But I really don't care. I mean, it is what it is. I think I prefer to play in leagues without them. Um, if we're gonna make them matter, I say make them matter. Let's start two of them. Let's take out that random part of it, and because now you need two, and so like, hey, you're way less likely to get two of them right than you are to get one of them right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of sounds like your next point, doesn't it?
I was gonna roll right into it. I didn't know if
Oh,
you had more to say.
no, no, we're good on the kickers.
What's what's better than one tight end? Two tight ends. Who doesn't love two good tight ends here? Especially with a league premium. It's the best format when it comes to tight ends. Look, people always want to talk about tight ends like they don't matter. And that's why tight end premium became a thing because you want to make these guys actually make an impact on your roster. They can't go ahead.
How much, just to get into a little bit of the details here, how much tight end premium do you prefer to play with, especially in this format that you're going to say?
If you're running two tight ends, I think your tight ends need to be scoring double points per reception of what a wide receiver is getting. I feel like that's it, at the very minimum like 1.75 more than what they're making. So if you're having a half point, then I would prefer that tight ends get a 1 point per reception. And when you have two of them, it brings in another market where these guys matter. Like if you play in one tight end leagues and tight end premiums, there's like four guys that matter. And outside of that, like who cares? Like I'll go find one off the waiver wire before I ever trade for one. But when you have to start two of them, now they matter. And they're getting thrown into trades and they're holding weight in trades. And honestly, they don't make all that much of a difference in a lineup, but everyone has to start two, which makes a difference that you have to find the ones to plug in. And when you have one of those elite guys, it's like you have a Justin Jefferson or a Christian McCaffrey or a Jahmyr Gibbs, or you have one of those guys that when you put him in a trade, you're getting way more back in those trades. So I don't know. To me, again, it's just because it opens up the market and it makes them matter in a way that there's more players to go around and there's more avenues to get trades done, which again is my favorite thing when it comes to Dynasty. It's kind of recognizing a market and finding ways to attack a market where I can find some leverage there.
Yeah, I've never played in a two tight end league, so it definitely sounds interesting. I definitely think, like you said, it does kind of open up more avenues, more different things that you can do. I think the tight end premium part is really important because otherwise it's like just make it another flex spot. Like I think if you're not gonna do something to help tight ends and make them relevant, then you should eliminate it and make it an extra flex spot. And then yeah, the five guys like you're talking about that are going to be the elite of the elite can be guys that get traded and part of the market. Otherwise, like let people start another wide receiver or running back. But yeah, man, I've never played in a league like that. It's definitely not a change that or a league if I was looking to get into it with people that I wanted to play with that would stop me from getting into it. It's not like a two quarterback league. Like I don't think I'd ever play in a two quarterback league. And I mean like you have to start two quarterbacks, not a super flex league, obviously. That sounds horrible just because I mean the level of quarterbacks, I feel like it's even lower when in a 12-team league you have to start 24 quarterbacks. But that's a completely sidetrack there. But I think it's interesting.
I'm in one league. It's a 10-team league. It's two quarterbacks and a super flex. And you start two tight ends? No, you only start one tight end. But the tight ends are getting 2.5 points per reception versus the 1 point that everyone else is. And that's a dynasty league. And I sold out to get a first round pick. And I took Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, and I'm dominating. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
I mean
fun.
that sounds like one of those one of the offshoot leagues we're in where they juiced up the tight end scoring, and it's like a league that the main point is to have a co-manager to do the league with, right? It's a redraft
Yeah.
league, but the main point is to get to know another manager. And we were talking about it. Shout out to Push the Pigskin if he listens to us. But I was like, hey, do you think these guys are gonna? And we were like, nah, Kittle will make it. We were like at the 1-8 or something. It was like tight end, tight end, tight end, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. We're playing with absolute sharks. Like it was something like that where each tight end reception was like 2.5. And then somebody went and traded the team that had Bowers, McBride, or that had Bride Bowers, and now they're scoring way more points than everybody. So yeah, I mean, it can get a little too crazy. Like you don't want to go
Yeah.
overboard, but I think doing anything that makes a position that isn't that relevant in the trade market, like you're talking about, more relevant, only makes the game more skillful.
Yeah, because you need to stay plugged in, and at that point too, you're relying on what you think about the game and not what um, the majority of the community like. Half PPR and PPR are just so standardized formats now that people don't have to think about it. They can just read and digest information on it. But when you get into these quirky scoring formats, like you have to like start thinking in ways that other people are not thinking, and it creates a dynamic that I really enjoy. All right, man.
Yeah, I
What's
mean,
your last one here?
yeah, I wanted to just hit some news real quick because just sprinkle it in here a little bit. What did you make of the Mark Andrews extension? Do you like, since we're talking about tight ends, do you feel like that kind of just kills Isaiah Likely here?
Yeah. You ever seen the Austin Powers where he's like fighting that I don't remember who it was. He's fighting someone and he's like, "Why won't you die?" Bro, get out of the way, Mark Andrews. My
Oh
Isaiah
yeah.
Likely bags do not appreciate your 3-year extension. Oh
Yeah, that
man.
that kind of felt like the Derrick Henry extension in the offseason. I don't know if that's where they need to be spending money. Like I'm not really sure that makes a ton of sense. But I mean, the Ravens are also known to be a pretty well run organization. So maybe there's a lot of like strings can be pulled, cuts to be made. Maybe not a ton of guarantee or back end load. Something. They seem like a organization that normally is pretty well run and does the cap pretty well. But okay, just wanted to get your quick thoughts on that since that news broke today. But we were talking about skill, and this one to me is something that I see thrown a lot, and it's like, yeah, just add more spots. Like, oh, you want to have a more skillful league, you want it to be more competitive. Just have 3 wide receivers and 3 flexes and super flex and the 2 tight end. Like, make it so we're starting 13 players because that means it's more skillful. And I just don't personally agree necessarily, right? Like, I think if there's a rhyme and a reason, I can see it. But just because you have an additional flex doesn't necessarily mean that it's more skill based, right? Like, I think you still need to be making trades. You still need to be doing a lot of other things if the starting rosters are smaller. I think it kind of plays into my whole thing of setting a lineup. If you have smaller rosters, those decisions get a little bit more difficult, right? Like now, who are you really starting, right? And obviously, I think for everything we've talking about, we're thinking of 12-team leagues, right? Like almost all of, like, I don't play in very many that aren't 12-team leagues. So, and I feel like that's mostly the standard across the fantasy football universe. I guess 10 teams are also, somewhat prevalent, but I think a lot of people play in 12-team leagues. So that's kind of what I'm basing it off of. So like when you do the math of, okay, there's 12 teams and 10 starters, that's 120 players that are relevant. I don't think just because you add like 2 more spots and now you add 24 more players, like it dries up the waiver wire, right? Especially in a dynasty league that I might already have really deep rosters. I think the waiver wire is an extremely important and also a big skill expression, if you want to call it that way. If you want to like take a gaming term and use it for fantasy football. So I just don't agree that like another flex spot, another wide receiver spot, makes it more skillful or more challenging.
Yeah. Like when I read this at first, I was like, I don't agree with it because I do think, but as you're talking through it, like I get what you're saying. It's like on the week to week game, it doesn't make it more skillful. It just creates more variance, or I guess a larger target to be hit right now, because now you're plugging in more guys. So it's more about depth in that case. And it's not about choosing the right talent on your team. It's just you can kind of take a shotgun approach to it. And I've been thinking about this now. I have this kind of theory in my head where it's like you can play really deep leagues where you are starting 13, or like a 14 team start 12, or 14 team start 11, something like that. You can play those almost like best ball leagues, where as far as like in terms of roster construction. So I think that's kind of where I land, is like the more starting spots, it takes more skill in the roster construction part of it than it does in the weekly management part. And that kind of just goes in line with what I was thinking about, how best ball in these deeper leagues are very similar, and they correlate in more ways than they don't. I prefer deeper leagues. And for that reason, I think, is because like I'm more about roster construction and getting. I'm really good at recognizing talent that is like outside of the scope of what people are focusing on. Like being on Ryan Flanoy, like how we've talked about him, or picking up guys like Alec Pierce, and just knowing that these guys are actually pretty good, but they're just not being magnified because they're not in a mainstream role, but they fill spots in these deep leagues, and you can take shots on them. So I get it. I get what you're saying from a week to week basis of it not making more skill, but I don't know. It hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think my biggest thing, kind of wrapping it all up in terms of, because I was my last point, and the best ball thing is like in Toe Clan, I really hated that the right move, right? It was a move that we talked about that I
Yeah.
did going into trying to win a back to back. I really hate that the right move was trading away CeeDee Lamb in a dynasty league to get Javonte Williams, T. Higgins, and Devontae Adams. But in terms of like winning a championship and the points per game accumulation, the depth that you're talking about, the roster construction, it does just make more sense. And to me, I hate that. Like I,
Yeah.
I want to start CeeDee Lamb. Like, I mean, not just the Cowboys fans in me, but like I've done several of those moves where you've had to, really build into depth in a dynasty best ball league. And like you're talking about some of these deeper leagues with more starting players. And I'm just more about like an elite asset, elite player type of person, right? But there's different flavors, and I think that's what makes fantasy so fun, is that you can really, if you look for it and you build it with the right people, you can really find whatever niche you want to scratch.
Yeah, and there's a middle ground for sure here. I think that you can, appease both sides here. The game of fantasy football already has a ton of strategy layered into it. And I think the people that enjoy that strategy side of things are the people who are liking these more starting spots and building and managing that way. Whereas people who are kind of playing fantasy to watch the game and enhance the game that they're watching on TV, I feel like that's more in line with, I want to play these studs. These are the guys that I like to watch. These are the guys I want to put in my lineup because I want to watch what they're doing and feel good about my team, who they're doing good for. So I think it's just kind of in line that way. Not to say that you don't enjoy the strategy part of it. I felt like there was an
I
underlying
feel like
tone
you
there.
were just attacking me there. Like I felt that was straight, like just coming right at me, like putting the knife in my. Well, I guess you did it from the front. You were being and twisting it a little bit. Nah, I mean, I do though. I personally like you said, I am all into strategy too. But there is something about, like, we're talking about Gibbs or Lamb or one of these guys like that. That is why I put that award in the first segment. Like who do you just enjoy having on your team? Because it is a little bit personal for me like that. But what was your last spicy fantasy wild take here?
I know you're gonna love this one because you're shouting it from the rooftops every draft season. Third round reversals are trash most of the time. I feel like third round reversals got introduced. I don't know. I want to say like 3-4 years ago, and I feel like at that time there was a large discrepancy between the first and the second round. Like the quality of picks that you were getting at those two positions was immense. But I think it's getting to a point now where that difference in who you're picking at those spots, it's not that different. Like when you look at who we were drafting first overall this year and in the 12th round this year, and you apply that to a third round reversal, you're getting players like Christian McCaffrey in the first round. You're coming back in the second round. You could have probably picked up Puka in the second round. And then if there's a third round reversal, you're getting JSN in the third round. That's wild. But in terms of how we were drafting 3 years ago or 4 years ago when third round reversals came out, and you also have this discrepancy of who the talent that was there, right? I mean, you had a lot of high-end talent, and now that we're seeing roles kind of shift where we don't really have these bell cow running backs anymore. It's way less common. So those guys that were going in those front rounds actually did get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. That's kind of going away now, where we're seeing a more pass-happy NFL, where wide receivers are getting a lot more attention. And just by the nature of wide receivers, there's a lot more of them. So the pool of players that we want within this first round has grown just because we're selecting wide receivers instead of running backs. And so because of that, like, I just feel like third round reversals just create more inequity than they solved to begin with. In some cases, I think when you get into superflex and dynasties for startups, like third round reversals can make sense in those setups because you can trade anyway. And having that first round pick to get like a Josh Allen or like a Lamar Jackson, like there's a huge inequity at the first round of a superflex dynasty startup than there is at the end of that, where you have to draft, after all the studs are gone, you have to draft those, running backs that you don't really want on dynasty, or, some other position that just isn't highly desired. So I think third round reversals have their place in some formats, but I think they've gone out of hand where they've kind of like stepped over the line into these other formats where they just don't belong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always been anti third round reversal. I don't really get it. I've had people explain to me like, how does it solve like how does it make it more fair? And maybe I could kind of slightly see that, like you talked about, like super flex, dynasties. But at the same time, it's like there's no guaranteed best spot to draft, even in super flex. Like I understand you don't get, but there's other players that you get access to that other people don't, right? Like if you pick a first round quarterback in a super flex, then you don't get Jamar Chase, you don't get this guy, that guy. And I think there's just a level of different type of preparation you need to do, but depending on your pick. Like if you're talking about one of those super flex dynasty leagues or a dynasty startup, you shouldn't know the draft order like 1 hour before, right? Like I'm big on like, let's set a draft order and let's set a draft date like 3 weeks from now, so everybody can set a strategy. If you do get the 112, okay, now I'm not going to have access to maybe the top 6 quarterbacks, top 8 quarterbacks in a super flex, right? I think there's another level of strategy that you can do that can be solved without adding a third round reversal. I don't know, man. This is just part of maybe my my fault in my person. I don't really have like a super strong reason to hate third round reversal. I just do, man. I'm like the old, like the Simpsons, like man yells at cloud outs, that sort of thing. Like get off my lawn. I don't know why. It doesn't seem natural to me. It seems weird. Like, man, you got the 112. Like, I'm sorry, that sucks. But like you said, if you really don't like it, then you can go make trades, right? Like, I think that's why trading is allowed in startups, or should be. I think most in any should be allowed. So like, if you really hate that spot, then go make a trade and get out of it, right? Like, there's other things you can do besides just, completely change the draft.
Yeah, I think my preferred format would just be to change the scoring or change the roster settings to where now there's a bigger pool of relevant players out there, to where it doesn't necessarily matter that you've lessened that inequality between those first round picks, because now the equality of those scorings between those players is more balanced, or at least the demand for those players is actually more in demand. Like, you need 2 tight ends or whatever it may be. So
Yeah, agreed.
yeah. All right, man. Hey, this was a lot of fun, dude. I feel like we should do more episodes like this. But yeah, we're rolling into the outro here. Number 20 in the books. It was a good one. I hope you guys are enjoying it, because I don't think we're stopping. The season may come to an end here, but we're going to try and get some fun stuff lined up for the off season here. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. But hey, man, week 14, go get those dubs, guys.
Yes, sir. Get ready for those fantasy playoffs. As always, guys, please like, subscribe, hit that, follow button. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're doing it all. We're going to keep going. 20 episodes in, and like Jmac said, we're not stopping anytime soon. So thanks for coming along with the ride with us.